Wonderful. Great. You guys are coming in. Glad to see you. I see Aaron and Jamie, Cynthia, Olivia, Carol, Pamela. I feel like there's Sal Pellegrino. Hey, Sal. Love it. And Bob and Squarey. We got some great people on this call. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Sarah Cooperman. I'm the CEO of SCW Fitness Education, Water in Motion and Seat Programming. And I am really thrilled to have these wonderful presenters with us here today. We're going to be talking about the future of fitness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just dive right in. The landscape of the health club chains, independent clubs, boutiques, not-for-profits, it's been forever changed. We've really lost about 25% to 30% of the fitness facilities that were pre-pandemic. And hopefully we're going to be coming back stronger than ever. We're going to look at fitness fads, exercise trends, wellness goals, and whatever drives our fitness industry. And I am really honored to have Liz Clark, who's the Ursa's first female president and chief executive officer in the association's 40-year history. Woohoo, loving that. She joined Ursa at a critical time post-pandemic. Oh my goodness. She's well equipped to double down on advocacy and communication efforts. So she's working and very focused on making Ursa well-known in Washington, D.C. So if we ever need funding again, we're going to be getting it. We've got Brent Darden, who is actually the interim CEO of Ursa. Yeah, Brent's the one in gray and Liz is the one in pink, if you couldn't, figure that out. He was the former board of directors chair for Ursa. He's accumulated a wealth of knowledge around the industry. He's been working with over 32 countries. He was also featured by the World Health Organization in their 2021 Global Expert Educational Series. And then Brent also chairs several Rex executive roundtables. We love Rex Roundtable. They've been doing a fabulous job throughout the pandemic and post-pandemic. And we've got Blair McCaney. He's the CEO of MX Metrics, Medallia's partner for the fitness industry, which was named Innovative Company of the Year by FitC, which is the Fitness Industry Technology Council. He's also the founder and president of Confluence Fitness Partners, operating gyms in Central Washington. And we also have Bill McBride with us. He's a health club industry veteran with over 25 years experience, managing all aspects of commercial, medical, residential, corporate. I don't even want to know. He probably does private training out of his garage. He's the co-founder of Active Wellness and the owner of BMC, which is a health club consultancy. So we're going to just dive right in. We're recording this. So if any of you guys have want to review this later, we'll be sending you an email about that. What I'd like you all to do is move your mouse, go to the bottom of your screen. You're going to see to the left of the green share button, a chat box. And I'd like you to click on that and please type in your name and where you're from. We love to see where people are coming from all over the country. And frankly, it's been all over the world. So please feel free to type in on the chat box and tell us where you are. Yep, there's Sal Pellegrino from Charlotte, North Carolina, Rochester, New York, Seattle, Washington, Omaha, Nebraska, Florida, Boca Raton, Florida, all over, New Hampshire, Colorado, California, blah, 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 Indiana, New Jersey, all over. So we're really pleased to have you guys joining us. I'm going to start, who am I going to start with? I'm going to pick on you, Brent. Where do you see we're going to be post-pandemic now? What do you see for 2023?
Well, like everyone else, I'm really excited about 2023. I think there's a lot of reason for optimism. As you mentioned in my bio, I lead several direct roundtables, and we've been tracking very closely how people are recovering financially from the pandemic. And the good news is people are recovering really well. There's a lot of clubs that are already outperforming the 2019 financial results that they had, which is great. Some of that's, of course, predicated a little bit on what part of the country they're in. The longer that they were closed down, they may be a little slower to recover, but those that have been open for a good amount of time now are doing really well. So it's exciting to see people to get back to where they were pre-pandemic and even further than that. So I think that's one of the most exciting things. Of course, everybody's really was focused on that during the pandemic, and it's good to see that. There's a lot of other good reasons to be optimism, but that's probably number one.
And there is a silver lining going on there, which is people really took a strong and hard look at their bottom line and really pulled out those expenses that they figured out that they could do without. What has been, Brent, what have you seen some of the stuff that people have pulled out, and what are some of the possibly technology or equipment that people have put into their facilities?
Well, I think first, the other thing that you asked what people have pulled out of it. And I think it's exciting also to see that we've talked in our industry for years about becoming more connected to wellness and offering something for the whole person, including mental health and total well-being. But truthfully, most clubs really didn't take a lot of steps to make that a reality. And coming out of the pandemic, based on the feedback from our consumers about how important mental health is and addressing their whole person, clubs, I think, are really accepting that mantle and doing some new things, offering some new programming that's going to move us that direction and give us a closer time to the medical community and the insurance providers as well. So to me, those are three of the biggest things.
Yeah. And if I can jump in, Sarah, I just think, to that point on the mental health and the recovery aspect, you look at who's coming back. So the consumer is not necessarily the same consumer that it was in 2019. I think, everyone learned in this crisis how important movement, mental health is. And so folks are coming back for the first time ever in more ways to improve their mental health and their body shape. And that says a lot about what the landscape's going to look like moving forward.
And that's interesting, Liz, because we're talking about the financial situation. ABC just did a wonderful research looking at big box gym usage. They talked about 2,000 different owners. And what was interesting, if membership was more affordable, 60% more people would rejoin the facilities, which I thought was interesting because I think, Blair, you were just about to say something. We were talking about clubs are raising their rates. It's not substantial, but it's enough to help keep our doors open and reopen.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things on that. One, you have to know your market, right? And I think we all understand that. What is your strategy? Know your market, and your price point should be reflective of that. And I don't care what price point you're at, bring value that exceeds the price that the customer pays. That's a big deal. Just this morning, McKinsey put out an article called "The Secret to Great Health: Escaping the Healthcare Matrix." And everybody should get this and read this article, because they actually put in sort of what I would describe as a maturity model to describe what great health is on what dimensions. What does it look like when it's poor, and what does it look like when it's really good? And to start to think about, it's less about exercise, less about what are the new things in 23 and 24, 25, exercise wise, but what are the new things health wise that health clubs could actually, bring to the marketplace. Because I think the more we think about different types of exercise and that, the more I think it just appeals to the people that exercise, right? So I think we have to kind of move back a little bit. And I have forever changed my thinking about this, about fitness as being about exercise. I think of it as being a biohack. And exercise and eating well are biohacks. And if we start to think along a biohack spectrum, then you start to think of other things that aren't exercise that fit maybe into your model. So I think that's going to be a big thing for 23.
Yeah, and it's interesting because part of our industry is, desperate to get involved with the medical community. And the other part of our industry is get me out of there as quick as I can. Bill, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, the name of our company is Active Wellness, right? And so I think what Blair's sitting on and what we're talking about is activity. activities a lot less intimidating than exercise or training or working out. I mean, working out and training, they sound like arduous tasks. And my 14-year-old daughter is getting unbelievable exercise, TikTok dancing, right? But she's not exercising, she's playing, she's having fun, she's dancing, right? And so dancing's fun. It's a hell of a lot of exercise when you dance a lot, and so, people play black box or VR or Oculus or whatever the VR is that they're doing, and they're playing. They're not exercising, but they sure are getting exercise, aren't they? So I think expanding that wellness definition, is critical there. And what's the saying? If I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken a lot better care of myself, right? And I think that's what we have a generation that's doing right now. If I knew I was going to live this long, I would have taken a lot better care of myself. So how can you take better care of yourself in a holistic way, not just exercise?
And Bill, if I can jump in on that too. You said, the word that I think that we all need to lean into, and that is fun. And, and what does that mean? And we see, some of these clubs coming out of the pandemic doing really fun, interesting things, bringing in golf simulators, bringing in axe throwing, bringing in sort of just crazy stuff that are keeping people in the club longer and movement and exercise, but they're not thinking about it that way.
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking about other activities I can do. I have to be honest with you, pickleball was a lot higher on my list than axe throwing, but thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah.
We also had some questions from people wanting the links to the articles. I'm going to include a link about the big box gym usage summary from ABC, and we'll also include the article from McKinsey that Blair referenced. Yeah. And when we send out the recording, we always will include some links to the references. You can just click on those and go straight to it.
By the way, Sarah, real quick, I would call the theme of that article from McKinsey is exactly what Bill said. If I knew I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself. They talk about how much longevity has grown, but how you still spend a good number of years not healthy, not active, not so. Yeah, everybody should read.
And it's fascinating. SCW does 7 live conferences and 5 conventions online. And our most successful online event was our Active Aging Summit. And it's because, I don't care if I'm in my 30s, my 40s, if people believe that. What I'm thinking about is my future and how I'm going to live it. And I think we're seeing a surge in that. Brent, I'm going to come back to you. What outdated business practices do you think that we've happily lost during the pandemic?
Outdated well, I'll throw out 2, so I leave something for my colleagues to talk about as well. And I think number 1 is probably the membership model. Clubs are creating new membership models. So the old model of you're single or you're a family, and then what is family defined as, and do you live in the same household? And now clubs are just really opening that up to let people join with friends, family, on same memberships and still get a discount if they come in together. I think the whole membership model is being changed by some clubs. And I think if you're still in the old school, if you've got these really narrowly defined membership categories, I just think that's a practice of the past. So that would be 1. And then second, I think related to staffing, we've all talked a little bit about the Great Resignation and how hard and challenging it is to find good staff members at different levels in your club these days. And I think as an industry, it's an outdated practice that we did maybe a fairly decent job onboarding of employees when they first started with us, but managing that employee relationship through the whole life cycle of their tenure with us was something we didn't give a lot of attention to. And I think that's something that's changing for the better. It's kind of being forced on club operators because they're having more challenge attracting people and keeping people. So they're really sharpening the pencil about what could we do differently? How can we pay better, more creatively? How can we keep them engaged? How do we make sure that we're, driving that employee engagement throughout their tenure? So those are 2 things that I would highlight.
Oh, that's interesting. And Blair, the king of customer service, how do you see things changing in 2023, post-pandemic?
Well, I think it's become more critical than ever. I mean, how people think about the experiences they have. And I think through every process. So when we talk about, and I was reading the notes ahead of this, what kind of business practice, outdated business practices should we slough off? Anything that's doing violence to the member experience. You know, I mean, you have to, if you have to be intentional about process creation, about business practice creation. You have to be very intentional about it. And it should be, and the intention should be based on what the purpose of your company is, what the vision and mission of your company is. And don't have business practices and processes that aren't in alignment with that. Yet a lot of us still do, in ways we sell, maybe in the way contracts are written, how people cancel, sometimes personal training contracts. And this isn't a binary thing, like do it or don't do it. Be thoughtful in how you design them, and what's outdated is the stuff that's doing violence to the member experience. I think
that's really interesting, because I think through the pandemic, we like became an Amazon generation. It was one click. People want to know the price up front. People want to be able to cancel easily and simply, and with a friendly hand, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get them to rejoin later.
Right.
And it's that smooth technology. Liz, what do you see as some of the things that are these outdated business practices that, thank God they're gone?
Right. Well, listen, I completely agree with all that's been said. And specifically, if you look at it even through the lens of how lawmakers and policymakers are seeing this, things like renewal and cancellation policies, inclusiveness, how we're defining families, the more that we've had those parameters on it, that's been damaging to our industry as our reputation. And so the fact that we are thinking differently about it, we are being more open-minded about it, is going to do dividends for the people that could potentially make pretty harmful legislation around us if we're not starting to think that way.
Right. That's right.
And I love that, Liz, because we have to think about what Washington thinks about us, because that dictates how consumers are going to think about us. And Aaron just mentioned, do you feel strong cancellation policies do damage to the member experience? Bill?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think anybody watch Friends ever? Anybody heard that show? It was a sitcom. There's one episode where Chandler tries to quit the gym, and Ross goes with him, and Ross winds up joining, and they never go back, but they just keep paying. And it really gives the gym a realistic approach to how it was for so long. Hard to quit, easy to join, a lot of pressure. Sometimes some operators intimidated people, did a lot of damage to our industry, and the consumers aren't having anything to do with it now. You got to be upfront, you got to be straight, you got to be authentic. And if you're phony and a scammer, you're going to be found out very quickly, and you can't hide. And so, we've got to wake up, if we want to be taken seriously, we've got to act like serious people that care about their members in a holistic way. And so, make it easy to quit, make it transparent to join, and be what you say you are, but that's a great episode if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. And being specifically tangential to that comment, Bill, about joining and being transparent, I think there's only a few clubs that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's a lot more that are still closely holding what their pricing is from the consumer. So they don't put it online. They don't make it readily available unless you call in, make an appointment, talk to somebody. And I think most clubs have realized that's probably an outdated way to go about it.
Yeah.
So those are really significant changes that we're seeing. And we talked about raising prices.
Sarah, can I say one more thing about the changes? Just personal training, having personal training be ongoing programming 1, 2, 3 times a week versus buy a package of 10 and auto renew. And, there's a lot of different changes in the programmatic aspect as well, not making people be a member to do certain programs, opening yourself up to the full community. You're not, it's a customer. It's not just a member. And so I think what we're talking about with membership expands to the program as well.
And that's coming to the US too, by the way, Bill. I mean, if you look at big brands in Europe, like Pure Fitness that are, have plans to expand in the HVLP sector here in the US. That's their model. Like, training's just part of what you get.
I'll add one more thing on these business practices, policies, business models, everything. Here's a very simple way to determine if you should change it or get rid of it. Any kind of process or business practice or policy. Is this happening to the member or for the member? That's it. Look at every one of them that way. And I promise you it will be stark when you look at it and you say, nope, that one's happening to the member. That's not happening for the member. Use that as a guide whenever you're doing your design.
We did just have a question. Maybe Blair can address this. Personalized programs for full membership. What do you think?
I'm not sure I understand. So personalized programs for full membership, personalized. You mean, I'd like to get.
Not just personal training that he just, or he or she, if you do not have a vested interest in your client, you cannot help them. Okay, that was from James. Absolutely right on. I think what they're talking about is, I think there's a lot of gyms that are opening up now that personal training is inclusive. Okay, it's included in your membership. So the price may be higher, but it's really a personalized experience. Anybody have seen any successes with that, Brent?
Yeah, I think what I take from that comment is something I see our industry embracing as a change. So I think in the past, many clubs use the new member orientation process to get them plugged into personal training or small group training, something that had a fee associated with it. It was part of a sales process. And I think what they're suggesting is we need to do a better needs analysis of people that are joining the club and find out where they are currently, where they want to go, and then be much broader and inclusive about our recommendations. So it doesn't all have to happen at the club. To Bill's comment earlier about being active, that can happen in their home. So maybe they come to the club only 2 or 3 times a week. That's fine. But as we're helping them develop their exercise workout plan about being more active in a lifestyle, it encompasses more than just whatever we're offering in our club. So we're talking about really personalizing each person's experience, not not using the new member onboarding process as selling process.
Yeah,
so the focus won't be the focus won't be ancillary revenue. Once we get you, once we got your hooks in you, we're going to put a few more hooks. Bill?
Yeah, to Brent's point, it's funny because in order to have individual experiences, you have to have standardized processes. Okay. And so I was talking to a trainer the other day, and I was consulting with a client, and I was like, what do you do in the needs analysis when you're working with a client on a fitness assessment and so on? He said, I just know my questions. I just talk to each client, depends on what comes up. And had no rhyme or reason to it, right? And so you got to have a standard playbook of, okay, here's the readiness questionnaire, here's the health history, here's what I'm going to ask about goals and desires and needs and wants and so on. So in order to have that individual specific experience, you have to have a very standardized approach to it, even though that's a fluid approach.
And I'll tell you, Midtown Athletic Club right there in Chicago has a phenomenal way to customize as people come in. They've been working on it for years. It's called their launch program. And it's a thing of beauty. They have sort of these 18 different, and if somebody from Midtown's on here, I guarantee I'm going to use the wrong language here. They have I would say it's sort of 18 different types of, it's not a persona. Yeah, I think that's it, Bill. And then the new member kind of selects, and it's all internal. It's not extrinsic motivation. It's all intrinsic motivators in every one of them. The person is sort of selecting those that motivate them, 1 or 2. And then they have so many hours that they can give to that person to customize their onboarding to match. It's really, they've worked on it for a long time. The data that they've collected on how effective it is outstanding. I won't share it, but I'm pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I just think also in the transition that our clubs are looking at, what are the other offerings that that people want? We talk about nutrition all the time, nutrition counseling, but a huge one that we've not yet talked about today is on recovery. And we're seeing what what clubs are doing, bringing in massage chairs, massage beds, thorough guns, that type of thing that's enhancing all these experiences where traditionally you maybe needed to pay a higher fee for that. But I think because it's a better member experience, a lot of clubs are rethinking that model.
Yeah, and MindBody did some phenomenal research, and they actually called this generation, it's not age related, they called it the W generation, the wellness generation, and that's what we're moving into, which I think is pretty interesting. I also really like the comment, Bill, you were talking about, we have to accommodate the individual. And in that ABC research that they did, they talked about 72% of their clients that go into their gyms are really working out on their own phones, on their own iPads, using the equipment, but following some type of protocol that was dictated by, let's say, an influencer or an outside organization. So I thought that was pretty fascinating too. There is a lot of online material available right now. And how can physical clubs and locations stay relevant and still use this? And Liz, I see you nodding. So,
well, I think you have to look at why people are coming to the club, and accept that technology is not going away. I mean, I think a lot of folks saw the recent study about with Apple Fitness coming on board and being able to go directly to your phone, not needing a watch. And they've got 1.2 billion consumers, which is 72 times more than the attendees that go to the largest chain in the world. So that's going to be, a real impact, and to looking to see what that means. But I think it's what you need to look at how people are leveraging the space, what it is that why they're coming into the club. And they're not all coming in to exercise. They're coming in, like we talked about earlier, for fun. They're coming in for childcare camps. We talk about community often. What does that mean? And that's the difference maker. And those are all things that I think are not necessarily able to be replicated as much by technology. So I think we need to lean into it, but also accept that it's not going to make us a thing of the past.
Yeah, we did get a question from Lee. Do you see our industry introducing our products and services to kids, the next generation of fitness consumers? We kind of thought, well, these poor kids for 2.5 years have been sitting in front of a computer, or if they're Bill's daughters, they're dancing on TikTok, right? Do you see that the health clubs might be opening more to kids, Liz? What are your thoughts?
I think you've got to be really careful from a liability standpoint on that. We've seen a lot of liability cases on that in the past, but I would love, to find a way. We've seen that the YMCAs can do it, in different ways. And so I think there's a great opportunity. And on top of being cooped up in your house, a lot of schools have eliminated gym, or at least, PE from the normal cadence of how it used to be. And even things like the presidential physical fitness challenge, it's not a part of schools anymore. So there's a big void for children being active, and especially for anybody that has kids, and you see how much they like their video games. And I'm glad Bill's kids are doing, TikTok movement, because mine are sitting in front of the Xbox, and, I'd rather they were moving around.
And I'm really glad you brought up liability, because I think a lot of people know I'm a lawyer, and unfortunately you can have the parents sign a release that says they won't, if their kid gets injured, they won't sue. A parent can't sign a release on behalf of a child. This is an independent person. So whatever piece of paper they're signing, it's not worth the pen they use. So what happens is you need to check your insurance policy and make sure that kids are specifically included. And if they're not included, that's okay, they're still covered. But you need to also make sure they're not specifically excluded from your insurance policy. It's a very good thing to ask for. And you can also have people add them on as an added insured. And a lot of times our insurance policies won't charge us extra for covering our kids. And that covers us. That's a good thing. I think, Bill, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just, I was looking at some Les Mills report that came out, I think yesterday, and they talk about cannibalism versus coexistence on the, we're never going to be able to compete with Apple and Google on content delivery with regard to production value, or even production studios or Hollywood, Netflix, whatever. So, you got to view it as not cannibalizing your business, but coexisting and growing the overall pie. That's one point I wanted to make. And on the kids, they also talk about it, not TikTok, but Fit Talk. I mean, TikTok is, that's from the Les Mills report, not my coining of that phrase, which I love. This is a big deal. I mean, TikTok is a behemoth of an entity. And that's the next generation of our consumers. And if we're not paying attention to TikTok, even if we, not going to draw in baby boomers coming in to join tomorrow from it, we're making a big mistake.
And Sarah, I have a question for you, just still on this kids thing, and I don't know if you must have the answer somewhere, but on if there's different certifications for trainers who are training kids, is that a different model? I don't know. And is that something that we need to be looking at, right? Their bodies are different. Their bodies are developed, not fully developed. I'd be really curious if that's.
It is. It's significantly different. SCW has a program that's called Kids in Motion, because we have water in motion, we have moms in motion. And we did a program called Kids in Motion, actually with Cammie Dennett, who's an expert, and she's out of Florida. And it's a wonderful program because you have to look at these kids. You should not be working with weights or heavy resistance if the child is under 8 years old. There's still too much growth going on between connective tissue as well as bone development and postural issues that arise. So the training is significantly different. And we've also seen influence in sports and athletics. Look at the publicity that goes on with these athletes that just push their bodies, and these kids that push their bodies and don't take the time off that they used to. And Liz, you brought up recovery. Recovery is huge. That's one of the #1 interests as far as I just looked at the trends report for CanFit Pro. It's one of the top 10 interests. Same thing with the American College of Sports Medicine. Their top 10 trends are recovery. So it affects kids, it affects individuals of all ages. We did get a question, and I'm going to throw this at you, Brent. Why? Because I can. How will the box gym club charging $9.99 a month affect the membership participation versus other health clubs that are deciding to charge a bit more to remain open? What do you see these influence of these, $10 a month clubs?
Well, I think I like what Bill said earlier, which is we're growing the pie. And whether it's a $10 club or whether it's Amazon or Netflix or Apple Watch, I think it's important for all of us that got in this industry because we wanted to make a difference and help people live healthier lives. That's what's happening, right? We've wanted to reach more than the 28, 22, 25% of the members that belong to health clubs. We want to reach a greater population. So all of these things are helping that. And specifically, these low price clubs are helping us be more inclusive and reach an audience that maybe didn't have the opportunity to join clubs that were pricier in the past. Specifically, I know Planet's done a really great job penetrating some lower income locations around the country. And that's opening up a whole new market that in the past, may not have had the wherewithal, so to speak, to belong to a high price club. So I think it's not detracting, it's reaching another segment of the market. And I've made this analogy in the past many times before. If you think about hotels, right, you've got everything you can think of on the hotel spectrum, from Motel 6 to Best Western to the Ritz-Carlton and everything in between. And people can self-select where they're comfortable going, how much they're comfortable spending, but everybody still has the opportunity to go and stay someplace that's comfortable and hopefully clean. And I think that's a good analogy to our business as well. We've got a broad spectrum that's going to serve a wider constituency than ever before.
And if we all are growing, everybody benefits.
Right.
As we become more relevant to the public. And I think that's one of the other silver linings of the pandemic. People became aware that fitness builds immunities and helps them on a multitude of levels. And I love you bringing up the socioeconomic influence of lower price facilities because I think we've been looking at this incredible growth we've seen with Lifetime Fitness and more country club focused facilities. And we love that. But if you're paying $250 a month, there's a lot of people who can't afford it. But possibly people are saying, I can afford $50, $60, maybe even $100 a month because I find value in my health. And we're relating fitness to health. So instead of going out and buying an extra pair of shoes, which would probably break my heart if I had to stop doing that every month, I'm going to invest in myself and my health and my future. And it was interesting. Somebody also brought up, we're looking at baby boomers more and more, the active agers, which is so important. We're not looking at kids because boomers have the money. Well, I'll tell you, parents will pay money for their kids. They will.
Hey, Sarah, can I make two quick points? Back in the day, when we had a new competitor come into a market near us, we usually lost 100 to 300 members from that new competitor within the first year. It's kind of the norm. Within a year after their opening, we had more than we started with. Every time there's more exposure, more advertising, more awareness, it grows that pie, right? So we can't be afraid of that. If 35% of the country were members of health clubs, we would not have enough clubs to serve them.
Not even close, right?
Not even close, right? Maybe it's 30%, but I know at 35% of the population, we could not serve them with the amount of clubs we have. We would be underclubbed. So we got to quit fighting for the same members and change our model to attract those people that are the next 5 to 10%.
Yes. And Liz, how do you think we can do to build our reputation so we can get these, we've got maybe 20% of the population exercise. How can we get that extra 15%?
Well, this was something that Bill and I talked about the very first time we met, was exactly like what he just said. It's like getting, let's just stop talking about the 80%, and even 15%. How do we get the next 5, And I think we have to be thinking about, again, making things fun, making folks not intimidated, and making things accessible to the variety of consumers that are out there. Everybody has their own sort of fitness wellness journey that they're on, and all kind of wanting something different. So this, this model that we're just going to keep doing things the same way and that we're going to, grow the pie is, isn't going to work. So I think that that's what's exciting, is you see all the different thinking around this and what that means. And just even back to one thing that popped in my head too, that's, you talk about parents paying for kids, and what we're seeing, and it's a really ironic stat, and it's not an official stat. It's just been me talking to companies that have been in places like that were shut down for so long, like California, like Chicago, like New York. Those are some of the states that are actually double-digit increasing their prices. So you look at the consumer who's there and what they can afford, and what what that means. It's much different than maybe a club in rural Texas, or somewhere else around the country.
Yeah, and building that value, so they will then be able to pay those double digits. They will be able to improve. We did have a question. Joshua asked, and Blair, I'll tag you on that. Would social media be the better way to integrate new members and to increase the chance of recruiting outside the usual percentage of those that join a club? We will ask that, but Blair, please, first, your response.
Well, I want to make the point. I'm in Central Washington, here in Wenatchee. It's a very agricultural area. Our minimum wage just went to $15.25 an hour. And that minimum wage is going up everywhere. And I think really there's can be more and more people that initially have more money to spend on things like this. I mean, we're seeing it here, younger and younger joining it. Our clubs are $50 a month. That's what they are. Yet we have, a lot of high school people that we didn't have before in our clubs, a lot. And so I think that's another thing to consider too. And I know minimum wage isn't that everywhere, but it just feels like there's just so much push on that, and then it's going up everywhere. But think about that as part of your marketing too. Like what is our price point? What is our low price point? Does it need to be that low? And I absolutely love what Planet has done. They brought a lot more people in the market, and I'm not talking about them because I know that's gospel at Planet, and probably always will be. But there's not just high price, mid price, and low price. There's low, mid, low, high, low. There's low mid, mid, and high mid, and same at the upper end. And all of them have sort of, a different sort of market they go after. You can be the highest price, low price club. Somebody is. And there is a group that has that strategy, by the way. Yeah.
Well, and another thing, Blair, that we haven't talked about too is the role of some of these, almost disruptor models. When you look at something like a class pass or a gym pass and what that's doing to attract new users as well. And the variety of price points that are on those things are, fascinating.
Yep.
Yeah. And we look at post-pandemic, people they want to have fun. They're like, I am free. I am out. I'm going to go to a concert. I'm going to go and do something that's fun and exciting and different. And so there are health clubs out there that do have the disruptions and really focus on the immersion, not only in their group fitness program, but the whole feeling that's going on in the club. Bill, you were going to say something?
Well, just on the class pass thing that Liz brought up, looking at Athletic Tech, report, reserving gym time is the 7th most popular activity on ClassPass. And in San Francisco, we got 50% of our ClassPass attendees were there just for gym time. So a lot of these gym pass, ClassPass, Global Fit, a lot of these things aren't something that you look as cannibalistic or parasitic, but look at as ancillary revenue. They're reaching people you wouldn't reach otherwise. And again, you're not in the membership business, you're in the consumer business. And so, thinking broader, but I just wanted to highlight what Liz brought up there, that is another social vehicle that is ancillary. And a lot of us shy away from those things, looking at them as parasitic.
Bill, do you think more people are gravitating to these class passes because they want the variety of experience? Because there was a time when it seemed to be, it seemed to be declining.
Yeah, I don't know their numbers, but I know that if I lived downtown New York, I would, and I were a class person, I like classes, I would definitely do it, right? Because there's so many different options and people do like variety. I think proximity is part of the deal and what your market has offering, right? And if you have one club or one studio on ClassPass, it might not be that big a deal, but if you have 35 in a 3-mile radius, different value propositions.
Yeah, which is the case here in Washington, D.C. It's super popular for that reason exactly.
And I wonder on that how, if you're using a ClassPass, I don't have any. I have a question, right? It's like if somebody's using ClassPass, do they really? And are they sort of shopping? And then they find, if you have a great experience at a studio, there's no way you're not going to go back. And I'm not sure that people want a different experience to test an experience every time they go out. Maybe they end up testing.
I don't know. I think there are certain people that want that, Blair. I think there are people that want a different meal every time and they like the new experices and they like to meet new people, especially
maybe it's a different generation.
Downtown market.
I'll be honest with you. When I just Google, I'm out of town, I'm in New York, I'll do yoga near me. And boom, they pop up and I go. And I hate to say it, but I wouldn't look at ClassPass. And I kind of agree with Blair. I find a facility that I like and I will go back to it. I might try a different instructor, but I know the facility, I know which way to walk, which way to go. I kind of like it.
Yeah, my only thing would be, let's not presume we know the customer that we don't know.
I know.
Well, that's why I said, I don't have an answer. I have a question, right?
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. Is there any new equipment or technology that will define 2023? I think, Liz, it was you brought up the massage tables. I'm thinking of infrared. I'm thinking of, what are those freezing? What is wrong with me?
Cryotherapy.
What, Blair?
Cryotherapy?
Yeah, the cryotherapy. Yeah. That was scary.
The drips.
Yep, IV.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but if you're talking about just on the fit, like, I don't see any huge changes on the exercise fitness side. There's some cool stuff. I'll tell you that eGym is doing some really great stuff, and it's being executed at both HVLP clubs and very high-end clubs. And I've been impressed with the numbers I've seen, and how the consumers reacting to that product, the eGym.
I think that's a transformational product. That and the BioCircuit from Technogym. Those are the two leaders in smart fitness, and it's using machine learning. I wouldn't call it artificial intelligence, but it's using machine
totally
learning.
Agree. Totally agree. So I think there's those innovations that then I think you got to go back to what Liz was saying and really decide. And I really encourage everybody to be thinking about just what is the next biohack you should adopt, because that's what you're doing is the ultimate biohack. Think of that whole spectrum and think of what you can adopt, not just exercise. Don't just innovate your business model based on exercise. Innovate your business model based on being the ultimate biohackers and the original biohackers.
Very cool. Okay.
I'll also just say though, there's a lot of happenings on what's old is new again. And we're seeing a lot of folks that are getting rid of some of these crazy complicated machines that they invested in, and they're bringing in weights. You know, they're bringing in, just the basic stuff that we had in the 80s and crushing
and doing a lot of functional training.
Strength training.
Stephen Therrett, a dear friend of ours that has passed away, wrote a book on the history of fitness. I think I might be butchering the name, but he went back and said, whatever's old will be new again, or whatever's new was old before. And saunas are back in different ways, and saunas have been here forever. Yeah. Kettlebells were replaced by dumbbells because dumbbells were more safe. Kettlebells came back. The self-suspension, self-using equipment, Joseph Pilates was way ahead of the curve on that years ago. So you look at all these things.
And ice baths, Bill. Ice baths are not.
Yeah, cold plunge. Cold plunge was here before I was on the earth. They had cold plunges, right? And so it's look back at the history of fitness, and you might be able to make some predictions of what's going to be recharged and come back again.
Show me a gym that has enough power racks right now, right? I was in a club the other day, had 10 power racks. Every one of them busy middle of the day, almost all occupied by females.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm just waiting to see thongs and leg warmers. All right, I'm going to show you guys a short video. SCW is partnering with Ursa. Brent was kind enough to start this partnership, and Liz is allowing it to flourish. So I really appreciate it. Let's watch this video. Here we go.
This is just the beginning.
I think that's great. I think what we need to realize is Ursa is not just for the big box gyms. Ursa is for boutique studios, independents, and Ursa is also for independent personal trainers and group fitness instructors. We need advocacy, and that's what Ursa is really helping us with, Fit Bill, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to show you one more thing. You're going to be able to see Bill and Liz and Brent and Blair and myself at our DC Mania and our Health and Fitness Business Summit. So you can see we have DC Mania just launched. It's in February, and we are going to have our Health and Fitness Business Summit there. So we do our conventions in all sorts of places, which is wonderful, all over the country, from Washington, D.C. to California, Florida, Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta. Love to see you guys there. Bill, thank you very much for joining us. Liz, thank you for joining us. What a pleasure. Brent, love you, man. Thank you so much for coming. And Blair, we always put up with you. So thank you guys for joining us, and thank all of you. We'll make sure we have our recordings and our links available for you. You will get it probably on Monday. Take care, everybody. Have a great evening. And thank you, Sean, for running our webinar tonight.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Sarah.
all.
Thanks all. Bye.